After 23 years of trying to earn my father's love, I found out he had already written me out of his future before I was even born. I wasn't supposed to know. The truth came out by accident, hidden inside a conversation he thought I couldn't hear. I had gone back to my parents' house to help prepare for my youngest brother's engagement party. My mother had asked me to pick up some decorations from the garage. As I walked back toward the kitchen, I heard my father laughing with one of his old friends. "I got lucky," he said. "Imagine if I'd ended up with 3 daughters instead of 2 sons. The boys carry the family. The girl, well, she was always just there." I froze. Then he said something that changed everything. "I decided years ago that everything I built would belong to my sons. That's how it should have always been." I stood there holding a box of balloons, unable to breathe. I had spent my entire life wondering why nothing I ever did was enough. In that single moment, I realized the answer had been decided before I had ever taken my first step. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 32 years old. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're listening from. And stay with me until the end, because what happened after that conversation completely changed my family forever in a way none of us expected. I wasn't an unwanted child. At least that's what everyone outside our house believed. People always said my father was a hardworking family man. Richard Brooks had started a construction company with 1 pickup truck and a toolbox. By the time I was born, the business employed nearly 50 people. Around town, everyone respected him. Inside our house, he was respected too. Mostly because everyone was afraid of disappointing him. My mother, Elaine, loved all 3 of us equally. I know she did. She tried harder than anyone I've ever known to keep peace inside our home. She smiled through arguments. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. She quietly repaired damage that nobody else noticed. Then there were my brothers. Daniel was 3 years older than me. Michael was 2 years younger. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. Inside, there was always an invisible line. The boys stood on one side. I stood on the other. I didn't understand it when I was little. I remember bringing home a drawing from kindergarten. My teacher had written, "Excellent work," across the top in bright red marker. I ran into the living room. "Dad, look what I made." He barely looked away from the television. "Very nice." That was it. 10 minutes later, Daniel came home, after kicking his first soccer goal during practice. My father picked him up and spun him around the room, like he'd just won the World Cup. "You see," he shouted proudly, "that's my boy." I remember looking down at my drawing. I quietly folded it in half. That was probably the first time I wondered if maybe I had done something wrong simply by existing. As I grew older, the differences became impossible to ignore. On birthdays, my brothers received bicycles, gaming consoles, expensive watches, camping trips with Dad. I got books. Not because I loved reading. Because my father always said books were cheaper. You don't need all that other stuff. When Daniel turned 16, Dad surprised him with a used pickup truck. When I turned 16, I got a card with $50 inside. My mother whispered later, "I'm sorry." I asked, "For what?" She looked away. "You know." I did know. Neither of us said it out loud. The excuses changed over the years. The boys need confidence. They'll run the business someday. They have different responsibilities. Boys are just different. But eventually, even those excuses disappeared. One night I asked him directly, "Dad, did I do something to upset you?" He looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "I feel like you don't." I couldn't finish the sentence. He sighed heavily. "You think too much." That became his favorite answer. Whenever I questioned unfair treatment. "You think too much." Whenever I cried. "You think too much." Whenever I asked why my brothers could do things I couldn't. "You think too much." Eventually, I stopped asking. Instead, I started trying. If Daniel got 80% on a test, my father congratulated him. If I got 98, he asked where the missing 2 marks had gone. If Michael cleaned the garage, Dad bragged about how responsible he was. If I cleaned the entire house, nobody mentioned it. I convinced myself that harder work would earn love. So I became the perfect daughter. Straight A student. Never drank. Never partied. Never caused trouble. Helped mom every day. Volunteered. Worked after school. Graduated near the top of my class. Still, nothing. I remember my high school graduation more clearly than almost anything else. After the ceremony, families gathered for pictures. My father hugged both of my brothers. He shook my hand. Actually shook my hand. Congratulations. Then he walked away to answer a phone call. One of my teachers noticed. She asked quietly, "Is everything okay?" I smiled. Of course. It became easier to lie than explain something I didn't understand myself. College gave me distance. I earned a scholarship because I knew my parents couldn't, or wouldn't, pay much. My mother secretly slipped me money whenever she could. $20 here. $50 there. Always hidden inside greeting cards. She'd whisper, "Don't tell your father." I never did. Meanwhile, Dad paid for Daniel's apartment near campus because commuting was too tiring. He bought Michael a new car during his first year of college because he needed reliable transportation. I worked evenings in a bookstore, weekends at a coffee shop, summer internships. I graduated with honors. Debt-free. Nobody celebrated. Dad simply nodded. Now find a job. I did. I joined a financial consulting firm. I loved numbers. I loved solving problems. Mostly, I loved that success there depended on results instead of someone's opinion. Within 6 years, I became one of the youngest senior analysts in the company. I bought my own townhouse, my own car, built my own savings. Every achievement felt good. Until I went home. Because somehow, I always became that little girl holding a drawing that nobody wanted to see. Daniel eventually joined Dad's construction company. Michael followed 2 years later. Dad acted like a king, handing his sons a kingdom. Family dinners became business meetings. They closed another contract. Daniel handled negotiations brilliantly. Michael's learning fast. Nobody ever asked about my work. If someone else did, Dad would interrupt. Finance isn't the real world. It hurt, even as an adult. Especially as an adult. One Christmas, I finally decided to test something. Instead of buying expensive presents, I made personalized gifts. Photo albums. Handwritten letters. Frames filled with family memories. Everyone loved them. Even Dad looked surprised. For one brief second, I thought maybe this time. Then Daniel opened the expensive power tools Dad had bought him. Michael received a luxury watch. Dad looked at them with pride. I got kitchen towels. My mother looked embarrassed. Dad didn't notice. Or maybe he did. I don't know which possibility hurts more. People often ask why I kept going back. Why not walk away? Because children spend their entire lives hoping their parents will eventually become the people they needed when they were young. You keep believing next birthday will be different. Next Christmas. Next achievement. Next conversation. Hope is stubborn. Sometimes painfully so. Then I met Ethan Collins. He was nothing like my father. Quiet. Patient. Kind. He listened more than he spoke. He worked as an architect and somehow found beauty in ordinary things. On our third date, he asked about my family. I hesitated. They're complicated. He smiled gently. Most families are. No. I laughed awkwardly. You don't understand. I don't have to understand today. That sentence stayed with me. He never pressured me. Never judged. When he finally met my parents, he noticed things almost immediately. After dinner, he asked carefully, "Does your dad always interrupt you?" I pretended not to know what he meant. What? You spoke 4 times. So, he interrupted every single time. I hadn't even noticed. That's how normal it had become. When Ethan proposed, my mother cried before I even answered. Dad asked practical questions. When's the wedding? How much is it costing? Who's paying? No congratulations. No hug. Nothing. During wedding planning, he spent months helping my brothers renovate parts of their houses. He skipped multiple planning meetings for my wedding. When the ceremony finally arrived, he arrived late. The photographer had to rearrange everything. Walking me down the aisle felt like another obligation. Not once did he say I looked beautiful. Not once. After the ceremony, people kept telling me how emotional my father looked. I wanted to laugh. He wasn't emotional. He was tired because he'd spent all morning helping Daniel inspect a construction site. Marriage gave me something I'd never really experienced before. Peace. Ethan's parents treated me like family from day one. His mother called just to check how I was doing. His father asked my opinion about politics, books, investments. Simple things. Things my own father had never done. One evening, Ethan's mother hugged me goodbye. I got into the car and burst into tears. Ethan panicked. What happened? Nothing. Nat, your mom hugged me. He looked confused. So, I wiped my eyes. I can't remember the last time my dad hugged me. He reached across the console and squeezed my hand. You deserved better. It was the first time anyone had ever said those words. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear them. Years passed. Life settled into routines. My brothers married. Children arrived. Our parents became grandparents. Dad adored his grandsons. He coached Little League, bought bicycles, built tree houses. When Daniel's daughter was born, he congratulated everyone politely. But I noticed the excitement wasn't the same. It reminded me of something. A familiar pattern repeating itself. One afternoon, my niece Lily, only 6 years old, asked an innocent question. Grandpa. Yes. Would you have wanted me if I was a boy instead? The entire room went silent. Dad forced a laugh. What kind of question is that? She shrugged. You always say Noah is the future of the family. Nobody knew what to say. Not even Dad. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flash across his face. But it disappeared quickly. People changed the subject. Nobody confronted it. I wish someone had. Maybe everything that happened later could have been avoided. Then came the engagement party. The conversation in the kitchen. The words I'd never been meant to hear. The girl was always just there. I stood frozen behind the hallway wall. His friend chuckled. You really never planned on leaving anything to Natalie. Dad answered without hesitation. She married well, she'll be fine. And if your sons mess up, they're still my sons. His friend hesitated. Seems a little unfair. Dad laughed again. Life isn't fair. Something inside me finally broke. Not exploded. Not shattered. Just stopped. Like an old clock that finally runs out of energy. I quietly put the decorations down. Walked out the front door. Got into my car. Drove away. Nobody noticed I had left. Not until an hour later. My phone rang. Mom. Sweetheart, where are you? I went home. Everyone's asking. I wasn't feeling well. She paused. Did something happen? I looked through my windshield for a long time. Then I asked softly, Mom, did Dad ever want a daughter? There was silence. Not confused silence. Guilty silence. That told me everything before she even spoke. I always wanted you, she whispered. That wasn't the answer I asked for. I closed my eyes. Mom. Another long pause. When I was pregnant, she began quietly, your father was convinced you were another boy. My heart started racing. He had already picked a name. She sounded like she was crying. When the doctor handed you to him, he smiled for the photographs. Then her voice broke. But later, he wouldn't even hold you. I couldn't speak. He said we'd try again. I gripped the steering wheel until my hands hurt. So Michael. Yes. He was the son Dad actually wanted. Mom began sobbing. I tried so hard to make him love you the same way. I whispered, "Did he ever?" She couldn't answer. That silence hurt more than any word possibly could. I ended the call gently. Not because I was angry with her. Because I suddenly understood something terrifying. My entire childhood hadn't been my imagination. It had been real. Every birthday. Every ignored achievement. Every unfair comparison. Every cold conversation. Every moment I'd questioned my own worth. None of it had happened because I wasn't enough. It had happened because I wasn't a boy. For the first time in my life, I stopped wondering what was wrong with me. And I started wondering what was wrong with him.